All right. So good evening, Astosh and Satyajit, and
Evening, Akshay.
good evening, and
Good
also
evening, Sajid.
one warm welcome to all those who may watch this episode later. A brief introduction about the topic. And For those who are new, we'll give them an idea that we typically have a free-flowing conversation on relevant and meaningful topics, usually curated by Ashutosh. And Today's topic is the need for learning. And this is a subject. So when Ashutosh, of course, you decided that we need to probably have a conversation around this. I was excited because this has been a subject close to my heart ever since I took upon the role of learning and development in 2013 at Cactus. So. Learning, of course, the first thought that came to my mind was that it sounds abstract at first, but my personal opinion is that learning itself is the art of deriving insights from abstract concepts, and I think we'll get into the details of this as we move forward. So Ashutosh and Satyajit, as discussed, we'll stay with our free flow and switch between being moderators and speakers as needed. So
Sure.
as always, we won't have any a fixed moderator. We'll keep switching. All right. So with that,
Good.
let me begin by asking both of you a few questions. We'll begin with that, which is why does the need for learning how to learn arise? And it would be great, if you could help all those who would watch this episode later understand what does learning how to learn actually mean, and what, according to you, typically blocks learning. So
Yeah.
whoever wants to go can start, and then I'll
You want to
I'll
go
add my
first, Ashutosh?
yeah. So,
Me?
yeah.
Okay. So see why I thought of this topic was for two reasons. One, of course, I was beginning to see glimpses of this becoming an emerging topic, particularly in relation with AI, because AI can learn, right? It can learn just like human beings learn. So, what is the difference then? And what is the distinction between what human beings can do and what AI cannot do, right? And the second thought was that, what we are taught of as learning is a very mechanical process.
Mm.
By mechanical, I mean that it's a very memory based process. You accumulate information. Based on the accumulated information, that information becomes knowledge, knowledge
Right.
becomes memory. From that memory, you act.
Mm.
So there's always a process of accumulation, and from that accumulation of information, you're acting. So, which is a mechanical process,
Mm.
right? And you can keep on adding more and more information, more and more knowledge,
Mm.
expanding your memory bank, expanding your knowledge bank, and from that you can act in multiple permutations and combinations, right?
Right.
All of this from knowledge,
Mm.
what has been gathered from the environment, which I think is a mechanical process. And also, the thing with this is that knowledge in itself is always limited. What I mean by this is that today I know this much, tomorrow I will know that much. I will add more, I will add more. So, knowledge is never complete, and knowledge always goes hand in hand with ignorance. So, and all of this is what AI can do, exactly what AI is. What
Right.
we have done is we have replicated this whole mechanical process of learning within AI.
Mm.
So, AI is memory based, AI learns from experience, and from that experience, from that accumulated information, it reacts, it responds.
Mm.
Now, that is what we understand as learning. That's what we have been taught as learning, and our and the test of that learning has been examinations, and the whole academic education, school, colleges is based on that,
Yeah.
right? And there are certain advantages to that, but that type of learning does not, one, it does not address the entire human being. It addresses only a very superficial part of the brain, which is, I would not even call it intellect. It is just a superficial part of the brain which is accumulating information and just acting from that level,
Mm.
right? And
Right.
which is what we are seeing happening a lot, especially when we look at corporate and other places. We see people acting from that level.
Yeah.
We see superficial actions taken. People do not go into the depth of things. They do not understand what they are doing. They don't understand the context, and they are just regurgitating what they have learned, right? So there is nothing substantial behind that. And then the other part of learning which we do not know, which what you touched upon, Akshay, when you said that learning is learning from the abstract, and that kind of learning, I would say, is something that we don't know, and
Mm.
that is something that cannot be taught. It needs to be discovered.
Correct.
And what you call abstract, I would simply call it as an unknown, as
Mm.
unknown, right? Much
Right.
of the universe is unknown. What is known is extremely small, and what is not known is tremendous. However, knowledge gives the illusion that it knows everything, it can know everything,
Mm.
right? It can solve any problem, it can answer anything.
Mm.
However, much of life, everything, much of who we are is unknown, much of the universe is unknown, right? And unknown can also be compared to emptiness. Emptiness is that which has no object, that which has no form,
Correct.
which is what the most of the universe is, right? But it is still conscious, it is still alive, it is in perfect order. So how do we learn from that?
Mm.
And that is the actually the real question. How can we learn from the unknown? And I think this is also related to the question of creativity, because I don't think creativity comes from knowledge, because knowledge is always the past. Creativity and insights, they always come from
Mm.
contact with the unknown, something that we don't know.
Right.
And yeah, so I think I've said enough, and
Mm.
let's discuss and let's hear others also. And in
Mm.
that process, we can unravel this thing a little bit more.
Correct. Correct. I think let's hear it from Satyajit, and then I can also add my thoughts to it. Yes, Satyajit, over to you.
Hi, both of you.
Yeah. Hi.
So while Ashutosh was talking about learning, and he gave us sort of an overall
Mm.
uh, picture of what learning means and what are the kinds of learning, the one
Right.
that you're more familiar with, and
Correct.
the sort of, for lack of a better word, the real learning.
Right.
Uh, what is interesting to me and has been for a number of years is my own learning path,
Mm.
which is sort of a roundabout way to answer the question that you asked, Akshay, but I feel that it's relevant.
Yeah.
And for me, I have realized that uh, creativity and, natural aptitude, all those things, yes, help and they are their own place. But what is more important is sort of it's what's hindering my way.
Mm.
And that I feel that, I mean, there are many ways to describe it, but the best description I have read somewhere uh, by this guy called Sasha Chapin. He describes it as learning to love the moat of low status. So what
Wow.
he's saying is that uh, people who are accomplished, who are good at what you want to be good at,
Mm.
imagine them staying inside a fort.
Mm.
Okay, and like any fort, that fort is guarded by a moat. A moat is essentially a
Correct.
ditch or a deep ditch that you cannot cross.
Right.
And on the other side of the moat are people who don't have the skills
Mm.
and sort of. metaphorical way, the lack of skills is what keeps them outside the fort.
Correct.
Now, for them to get to the fort, they have to cross the moat. But crossing the moat, more than difficult, it's embarrassing.
Right.
And while you're trying to cross, you will fail. You will have people watching. It will be a very public experience.
Mm.
So, what people do is they try and make up excuses to not cross. Or they may say that the fort is not worth crossing the moat for, or it's too hard, or I don't feel like it, or whatever. We
Yeah.
reach to those rationalizations are everything to escape that embarrassment, that
Mm.
sting of humiliation.
Yeah.
And I have realized that that has been a big factor in my learning journey.
Mm.
The things where I've been able to learn have been where consciously or not, mostly unconsciously, that I have escaped that embarrassment. I have got some early validation.
Mm.
But in cases where I have come face to face with that sting of humiliation, with that embarrassment, it's been
Right.
very difficult for me to learn. And
Correct.
either I've given up or I've made up some excuse and said this is not worth it.
Mm.
And I can think of many instances, especially after COVID.
Mm.
Uh, I tried learning no-code tools.
Mm.
There are hundreds of no-code tools now in
Yeah.
order to build websites and apps and whatnot.
Correct.
And in my cohort were a number of product managers who are more familiar with tech, and I'm not a techie.
Mm.
So those early experiences were like, oh, those were very bruising. And it was, as an adult, I was in
Correct.
my 30s, then it was very embarrassing. And I realized that, and it happened again and again when I tried to learn how to write clearly. Now I am learning how to read better, in a conscious way. In all
Right.
of those things, whenever I have put myself publicly inside the moat,
Mm.
I found myself coming face to face with that embarrassment.
Correct.
And that has been the key to my learning journey, my ability to be willing to go through that.
Right.
And everything else uh, has been almost theoretical
Mm.
to me that, okay, if I don't learn how to cross the moat, nothing
Mm.
of that else will matter. Yes, I will learn a little bit, but in the end, it will stop. And
Right.
I mean, my experience has been that I've not learned a lot of things because of this fear of embarrassing myself.
Mm. Right. And I think that is what perhaps becomes one of the biggest block in learning. Going back to that part. So what I'm taking from both of you is obviously Astosh's way of explaining that it's the unknown, and when you obviously learn it, it becomes knowledge. So it's known to you, and then you keep moving forward. In your case, I like the analogy of the fort, and people outside the fort trying to reach there, upskilling, learning, and obviously facing their own inner demons. And I think that's the beauty of the concept of learning, right? Because each of us has a different perspective, different perception. Uh, so according to me, of course, learning is what also matters, according to me, is the intent. What is it that you want to, what's your intent behind learning something? So even my learning journey, once I moved out, when I started Samaks, so for me it was so while customer experience, mentoring people, training people, coaching people was something I'd done. But for me, what was new or what was unknown was marketing and sales, something that I didn't do it at Cactus because uh, I never connected to these two domains. Mainly because I realized I did not have the capabilities, could have been my limiting beliefs, is what I think now. But that is something that, I realized that, and that's what tells you, because once the moment your situation changes, in the you face new situations in life, you come across different stages where you need to decide what is it that you want to learn, what is it that you want to probably focus on. So for me, learning how to learn is first identifying what is it that you want to learn. Why are you spending your time on it? Now, even with my current role, while as you said that you spend time studying probably codes. How do you make a website? I tried doing that, and within a week, I realized that's something that doesn't interest me. So learning is also about what interests you. And at corporates, I believe people focus a lot on competencies, which is fine. But people shouldn't focus on mastering a competency just because it's the need of the role. It's either that you have that competency or you don't have. Yes, you can learn, you can train yourself, but what matters is why are you there in the first place? Why do you want to master that competency, or why do you want to learn that particular skill? Just is it because the company is asking you to do it, or is it that that is something that is going to take you forward in your journey? And blocks, as you said, I think one is obviously when you probably start fighting your own inner demons, or you don't accept it. I think that's the first block. Another block, and I think Ashutosh touched upon it when he said that when you feel that you know everything, right? I think that's another block to learning, and my that and that's where I'm now probably taking you guys towards the corporate scenario of learning, because I think Ashutosh, you briefly touched upon the concept of formal education system. The missing element is obviously memorizing, that rote learning, as we say. But I believe now the scenario is changing, where people, I think, are focusing on what really matters for students. But do you think that the missing element in say formal education system, like making it more memory based and not experiential, do you think, and the way in which we adopt to learning, do you guys feel that these gaps perhaps show up in the corporate world through individual behaviors and performance? The way a person learns, the way a person perceives, his or her role. What do you guys think? Uh, and how does the formal education system or the gaps in it impact the performance of an individual? What do you guys have to say about it? Yeah, you- maybe
Sorry,
I think if
yeah,
you
that's
want,
a
I can add, or Satyajit, if you want, you could
no, no.
perhaps.
Feel free to add because
Yeah, it's
see,
a free flowing.
it's a big
Yeah, so I think
question.
again, I'll probably talk on it based on my experience. So according to me, yes, it does impact. So if I have to take my own example, yes, my method of learning in school would be memorizing, like any other normal average student, mugging up concepts, trying to remember, going for the exams, clearing it, passing the exam, and moving forward. Right? Cut to in the corporate world scenario, and that's what we see, right? When you get people to focus on what is it that they want to develop. Even now, I realize that what is probably stopping people is perhaps their inability to be comfortable with uncertainty, comfortable with uncomfortable situations, because that is also one of the important aspects of learning. Because if you are not allowing yourself to be in an uncomfortable situation, you're perhaps stopping yourself from growing. And this has its roots
Yeah.
in your early childhood as a student, where you were only focused on the marks. So here, cut to for an individual, he's only focused on the performance appraisal um, uh, and feedback. That's also one of the blocks. I mean, I'm trying to connect the earlier question here, but are probably the fear of receiving that feedback, right? Most people, look at feedback as criticism. So that also has its roots in our childhood, based on the messages we perhaps receive from our teachers and parents. And I think in the formal education, nobody tells us how to respond to a particular to a particular emotion. How do you respond to, as I said, uncertainty, and how do you face your fears? The focus is only on those formal learning concepts.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that is what is missing, and that is perhaps impacting overall individual behaviors and performance. Again,
Yes.
these are my views, so would love to hear from.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Akshay. Traditional education does not address the full human being.
Yeah,
It addresses only a very small part of human being. It does not prepare him for life. It does not teach him how his mind works. It does not teach him how their emotions work, right?
yeah,
It does not teach them how to deal with uncertainty and so on. So, a large part of life is unknown
correct.
to them.
Yeah,
And the only part they know of the small cultivated part of the brain, so called educated brain, they think that that can do everything, but it cannot, right? And we try and operate from that brain. We operate from that brain when we are in the school, right?
yeah,
Examinations and so on. When we reach into a corporate, we still try and operate from the same brain.
yeah,
Again, so corporate or a job becomes an extension of school. We behave in the same way.
correct.
We try and do things to check mark things in order to move ahead or in order to get, in school they are grades, in corporate, what do you call them? Ratings or,
Ratings, yes.
something or the other, right?
Right,
So it
right,
becomes an extension of the school. And yeah, and so I see very, very superficially. Mostly people work very, very superficially. That they wait to be told what to do. They want, they are unsure, and they don't want to take steps to be sure.
correct,
So for me, as in part of my learning journey, uh, facing uncertainty has been the biggest challenge,
mm,
because uncertainty, or you can say uncomfortable feelings, or not knowing, it's a very, very uncomfortable situation, but it is a fact. It
right,
is the truth. The fact is you don't know. The fact is that you are uncertain. The fact is that knowledge is limited. What you know is very limited. You cannot capture everything through what you already know. So those being with the uncertainty, trying to learn from them, and from uncertainty, then going to certainty, I think gives a very different kind of confidence and a very different kind of learning,
correct,
which comes from simply accumulating information and then being certain in your knowledge.
correct.
So that is what I think. And the second, what Satyajit mentioned about facing embarrassment, and what you also mentioned, uh, I think the root cause of what blocks us is ego.
Mm,
And ego is nothing but knowledge. And so I would say that knowledge is of two types. One is the technical knowledge that we gather information. The other type of knowledge is knowledge about ourselves,
yeah,
which is the ego. So, ego is not the knowledge about ourselves, what we think about ourselves, what we feel about ourselves.
mm,
And this knowledge, we are always identifying with this knowledge. We are always identifying this with this knowledge. And when this knowledge is missing, or when this knowledge feels insufficient, we feel uncomfortable. But the truth is that this knowledge is always incomplete. It is always, by nature, it is in the past, it is insufficient, and therefore it cannot grasp something new. And that is the challenge of ego, because ego ego wants to always feel that it knows everything. And when ego is in an uncharted territory of the unknown or uncertain, that's when it begins to kind of uh, you know become afraid. And that is the fear we have to face, because beyond that fear is lies change. And when we mean learning, I would also say that learning is change, in which we not just acquire some new information, but we fundamentally change because we are not the same. We are also changing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's the gap that needs to be bridged, right? So yes, over to you, Satyajit, and let's hear it from you.
So in my corporate career, I've realized that I've learned better when I've been validated early,
Mm,
and that early validation has sort of put me at ease and
mm,
allowed me to explore further. Uh, on the contrary, when the validation hasn't come early, when there's been
Mm.
a delay in that, then I've had second thoughts. I've
mm.
second guessed
Yes.
myself. I've
Correct,
also asked a number of other questions that seemed reasonable at that point, but it was merely a symptom of my discomfort with being not knowing, like Ashutosh mentioned.
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
And to even go further back, this I realized quickly in sort of some time in high school that uh, this was when I sort of, I realized that I was one of the uh, students in class who got better grades.
Mm,
And I realized that that stopped me from asking questions sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I would probably uh, coalesce both my corporate experience and my high school experience as reputation is the enemy of learning.
mm.
So once a reputation of yourself forms in your head or people sort of validate you,
Correct.
then your objective becomes to live up to that.
Yeah,
Mm.
And then you're optimizing for that, for your for sort of safeguarding or preserving or even enhancing your reputation.
correct.
So learning becomes whatever, sort of a, if learning gets in the way of your reputation, then you don't want to put yourself in situation where
Right.
you don't know.
Correct.
And it
Yeah.
happens almost subconsciously because it's a hard thing to admit
Mm,
to yourself.
correct.
You know, at one level, your ego wants to preserve itself and to sort of tell
Right.
yourself that you are enough, you're complete. And at
Mm.
the other end, when it comes face to face with this fact, oh, you're obviously, not
Correct.
complete. You have some distance to
Correct.
cover. That's
Correct.
a sort of a dichotomy that's hard to bridge.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
And it feels
Absolutely.
terrible, to not feel validated,
Mm,
but it's a blessing actually, if you're not validated.
mm, right.
It's
And I
actually,
think,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
on,
No, no,
Ash.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
So just to add to what Ashutosh is saying, so over time, I have come to see it as a sequencing problem.
Mm,
That it's basically this. It's very easy ex to think of the embarrassment and the humiliation uh, because it happens early, it happens first, because you don't know anything, so you're going to falter, and
correct.
you see that crystal clear. But it's very hard to imagine the excellence
Mm,
because that comes later.
right.
After you've sort of swam through the moat, you have acquired some skills the hard way.
Correct.
Only then you get to experience sort of, the feeling of being in flow, for example,
Mm,
which you need to have a certain skill level.
right.
Because up until that point, everything is way above your level.
Correct.
So people extrapolate that embarrassment
Mm,
as lifelong
yeah,
and they underestimate or rather discount the excellence.
correct.
Uh, and I don't know, maybe
Mm,
some self-help books out there that give you a quick trick, but
right.
there is no other way than to go through that
Yeah.
embarrassment.
Absolutely. I think well said, well said. Because I think
No other way.
that's I think when you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, I think that is the best way to learn, and that's the best way to move away from external validation to say maybe self validation. Because that facing those embarrassing situations push you to look inward, and that also forms the process of learning, which is learning your own self, right? Because that's the
Yes.
biggest
Yes.
chapter that we humans have to keep learning. I think, and that's a lifelong process.
Mm.
Yes,
So yeah,
because
well said.
when the ego tries to search for itself or look at it, actually, ego is just an illusion. It's not a solid entity. But when it tries to look at itself, it tries to look at self at an image
Correct.
of itself based on past experiences, right? So
Correct.
when we keep on identifying with that ego or keep on searching for that ego. By the way, the word root cause of the word identification means always the same. So it is
Oh,
always the same.
okay.
Ego, the feeling of ego, the feeling of I am is
Mm,
always the same. And as long as we keep on searching for that feeling or trying to find security in that feeling, we cannot change.
mm,
And because and that also kind of limits our potential because we are constantly identifying ourselves with past,
correct.
with what we have
mm,
been.
Mm,
So but we are unknown. We are not the known. The known is a very, very small part of it that is gone, finished. But we are
mm,
the unknown. And what we have to be in a process of constant discovery
correct.
about who we are.
Yeah.
Discover our thoughts in
Mm,
the present, discover our feelings in the present, go through the fear in the present,
right.
not merely virtually through the past.
Correct.
And generally, that is the mistake that we make is that we try and learn or
Mm,
find learnings in the past
correct.
only. The past
Correct.
may have certain learnings,
Right.
which I believe subconsciously, anyways, we kind of assimilate. But the real learning is from the present, from the unknown, where we are in a state of exploration and discovery.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think if you guys have been a part of any Johari window session, right? I think that's the fourth window is the window of the unknown. And I think
Mm.
that is what we need to probably, we as in the humans, us humans have to look at finding and going to the root cause, as you said.
mm.
Yeah. So, and
So,
how we do it. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, no,
Yes.
I had a question for the two of you, but
Sure.
you
Sure.
can finish
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
thought.
No.
I
No.
think.
I think my question was on creativity, on how do you move towards that unknown using creativity if possible. But go ahead. I think
Mm.
Yes, it's good. That's a great point. Yeah.
So yeah, I was just wondering what has your early experiences of learning,
mm.
how do you think that may have affected your openness towards learning as an adult? If there's
Yeah. Yeah. I
anything
think
that comes to mind, like
yes.
what's your own view of
It
your own
it
process?
it does. I still remember this incident from the first standard. I'm not sure if I had shared this earlier. But I was from St. Michael's, a convent school, and the teacher asked me a question, and I stood up and I said, "Teacher, मुझे English नहीं आती, क्या मैं हिंदी में बात कर सकता हूँ?" And the
Hmm.
teacher was angry. She's like, "How can you not know English? You're a student of convent school." And I think that was the first month in the
Hmm.
school. So I think she humiliated me in front of the entire class. So that was the fear and that was that shame, my first experience of shame.
Hmm.
And that continued because after that, every time I tried asking a question, say, to my teachers, they would be like, "What were you doing when we were explaining?"
Hmm.
So then I said, and messages from my family and say parents was that never question authority. Do
Hmm.
as we asked you to do. So what I started doing, I realized, and I think I kind of absorbed that if I ask questions, they will probably humiliate me.
Hmm.
They'll think I don't know.
Hmm.
And that is where my learning stopped. Uh,
Hmm.
and even in the corporate world, my initial days at Cactus, or perhaps I think the first 10 years at Cactus, I would stop myself from asking questions
Hmm.
because of the fear of being humiliated.
Hmm.
And it's only when I reflected on my learnings, I realized that I was actually humiliating myself by not asking questions because that was impacting my growth. That actually impacted the growth.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's only when I realized it, I was like, अच्छा ये first standard के पास जाता है. So
Yeah.
that's my experience with learning. Astosh, that's a great question.
Yeah, so if I start in schools, I mean, I never took school or anything so seriously, actually. And so I did not have same struggles that Akshay had. I was always like the average student, never the last or never the first.
First,
And and I could never bring myself to make an effort to learn anything deliberately. I was never able to do that, and I've never done that. Even during boards, I pretended to buy books and spend time. Used to do planning. I will study this, I will study that. This day I will study. I used to create timetables, but I used to never study.
Stick to it.
mm,
And but I always managed to pass.
mm,
Then even after that, when I was for a year pretending to kind of study for medical entrance exams. I used to go buy books, but then I would read some other books, non-fiction or something or the other. Never that. So for me, I've never forced myself to
Mm.
learn anything that I'm not interested in.
Right.
And naturally, my attention has been drawn to whatever it has been drawn to. I've just learned that.
Right.
mm,
That has been basically in the school and in corporate. Again, I worked like that, and for most of my career I think I worked very mechanically. Like, I mean, whatever came naturally I did. I didn't put a lot of mind, lot of thought into it.
Mm.
I think for a large part of my early career I was a bit kind of lost or absent minded. I mean, I was there, and I had some natural knack at certain things, which
Mm.
probably made me, get to where I got. But I didn't put a lot of energy
Right.
or effort into work also.
mm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. How about you, Satyajit?
Yeah, these yearly experiences clearly have a long shelf life. So,
Yeah, yeah.
for me, I remember. So I'll just start with sort of what I have sort of distilled from that,
Mm.
and this is something more recent. I've sort of come to the conclusion that learning is the feeling of breaking your own previous rules. So, and one incident that comes to mind when I was, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old. I think my uncle asked me, "How do you clean a thermometer?"
Mm.
I told him, "You put it in boiling water." Okay,
Right.
and he had a good laugh about it, and he then shared it with others. And much like your experience in class, Akshay, I
Right.
felt humiliated.
Correct.
Sort of, you
Right.
know, and that stayed with me.
Mm.
And I mean, the fact that I'm sharing this is a good sign that has stayed
Correct.
with me.
Correct. Correct.
But then I sort of developed a coping mechanism, and I see that a lot now that I'm a coach. I see
Yeah.
that a lot in clients
Yeah.
as well, uh, which is that I learn to learn in stealth,
Mm.
sort of theoretical learning.
Correct.
People say learn by doing.
Right.
है ना? But there's a problem because if you do, then you're exposing yourself to
Mm.
humiliation, to judgment, and to
Correct.
embarrassment.
Right.
So, what people they of course they find it hard to identify as a non-learner. So they will
Right.
say that no, I am a learner, but this is how I learn. And so
Mm.
if you think of it as think of it as a bell curve, the beginning of it are the people who are absolutely mortally scared of learning. They
Right.
just do not they may simply raise their hands and say that I'm not like that. मैं तो
Correct.
ऐसे ही ठीक हूँ. Very small
Right.
percentage.
Right.
And at the other end are the whatever the entrepreneurs, the people who are willing to put themselves out there because who are intensely curious and
Correct.
creative and whatever.
Correct.
They are also a minuscule.
Mm. Right.
The majority of the people are on the bell part of the bell curve,
Yeah.
where they have, just like me, developed these very elaborate coping mechanisms because they can't identify with the people to the left of them who are the non-learners, and they're too scared to be complete learners. So they say
Correct.
that I learn passively. I learn in books. I'll
Mm.
do theoretical learning,
Right.
and I learn in stealth. I'll take course after course after course. I will learn by
Mm.
books after books after books, but will never put myself out there.
Mm.
And to me, for me, rather that was that sort of scar tissue that had formed from those early bruising
Correct.
experiences.
Correct.
Learning means humiliation, and I can't be humiliated. So, but I still wanted to show that I know.
Right.
So I learn from books because I'm safe.
Right.
The book, the author from the book won't jump out of the page and laugh at me, for
Right.
instance.
Correct.
And in school, it worked. Just like Ashutosh was saying about traditional thing,
Mm.
about traditional learning not addressing the whole human being. This way of learning didn't address the whole of me.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I was still stunted. I was stuck as that 9-year-old who had no
Correct.
defense mechanism.
Correct.
But intellectually, I developed the tools. I learned this, learned that, read more books, answered
Right.
questions in class.
Yeah.
But so all of this sort of has made me understand that for me, learning is simply the feeling of breaking my own rules. My own rules are theoretical
Mm,
learning,
correct.
not learning by doing. So for me, true learning now is actually breaking all of those rules that I have unintentionally created for myself.
Yes. Well said. And I think that's what people need to do, and that's what I believe you as a coach and me as a coach. We keep telling people that you need to reflect on those early life experiences, your limiting beliefs, break those rules, those beliefs, and keep beliefs and keep moving forward. Right. And I think that's what brings me to the next question, which is connected to this. So when you say finding coping mechanisms, I think that's where you probably use a lot of creativity. Would love to hear from both of you. How do we connect learning to originality and creativity, and also what, according to you, is the role of boredom or say discontent in the learning process? We'll
Hmm.
just we'll break it into two if you want.
Yes, let's break it into two
Yeah,
because, yeah.
correct. So I think we'll probably focus on the connection between originality, creativity, and
Yes.
learning. Uh,
Yeah. So
So
go
go
on,
ahead.
Ashutosh. Go ahead.
Yes. So originality is something that needs to be discovered. Then it is original. So what I mean by that is that what we need to do is, and I think it's very much related to learning how to learn. Learning how to learn, if there is no originality in learning, then it is not learning in the sense that we are talking about. Then it is acquisition or accumulation of information. But if it is learning, then there is always originality in it. There is always a newness in it. And what I mean by that is when we are reading something or when we are looking at something, if we are still with it or if we are slow with it, then we learn from it. Then it reveals itself. It's not like our brain is in operation, it is saying, oh, it is this, it is that, I like this, I don't like this. We are open to receive.
correct.
And that and then when we are open to receive and we are listening to ourselves, then when we are listening to ourselves we will discover what our mind is thinking, what we think actually, not what we have been told, what we are thinking according to our past experience, but a completely new thought.
Correct.
I think that is originality, and that is how I learn basically. I'm alone with the thing and I'm just with it. I just listen, I just see, and 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 that's how I learn basically. I
Correct.
don't make an effort to learn. I don't say that, oh, I don't judge or I don't evaluate. I let the thing tell me about itself. And that requires that I'm attentive. I listen deeply. I'm with that thing. I'm alone with that thing.
Correct.
That feeling of being alone with something, intimate with something when there is no distance between you and the thing, when you are just observing or just listening to something purely. I think from that originality
Correct.
and learning comes.
Correct. Absolutely. So what you're saying is originality is again your insights on that particular topic and
Yes.
adding those thoughts to the
That's
process.
right. Original to you, something that has
Original to
never
you. Yes.
occurred to you before.
Right. Right.
Something nobody has told you, something
Correct.
you have not read in any book, you have never thought of before, a totally new perception, a
Correct.
totally new thought, a totally
Got
new
it.
way of looking at this, at
Got it.
things. Yeah.
Got it. Well said. Yes, Satya.
Yeah, that's a very good definition by Ashutosh, and this is something I had read from this polymath called Robin Hanson, and he had said that his own, because he's a polymath, he's sort of, he's almost like a compulsive learner. He's learned many skills, and his test for whether or not he is getting better at a new skill is whether or not he is coming up with original insights on that skill, which is, resonates with what Ashutosh said. because many people, they call themselves, I'm a generalist, I'm a jack of all trades. But that's a very loose definition because it cannot hold you accountable, uh, and it's easy to pass off as one. But sort of I think a good test for whether or not you're learning is whether or not you can come up with your own ideas that may have someone else may have got them. That's secondary, but no one has told you that. Like Ashutosh is saying. The other way I want to think of this originality question is, for example, in coach training, you learn about different ways of learning, and there are broadly five modalities. Visual and auditory, kinesthetic, and multimodal, and there's something else. Uh, Reading, and of course.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but most of us, especially going back to the traditional education point, learn by reading or writing. You know,
Mm.
but that doesn't mean that everyone is equally suited to it. Like of late, in the last 3, 4 years, I've learned more of YouTube videos than by
Mm.
reading.
Yeah.
When I want to, and also in coaching also, now AI has the capability to actually act as a mentor coach
Mm.
if you're able to articulate it. But the feeling of, as a client, I believe, looking at a person, having them ask you questions, uh, responding to them visually and verbally, that also helps you learn.
Yeah.
So to me, the originality question is discovering what are the best ways in which you learn,
Mm.
and to be attuned to yourself so that the resistance to learn, the barrier
Correct.
to that entry is lower. Because all you want to do is lower the barrier to entry.
Mm.
Because you are naturally curious, you are born curious, like
Right.
like all
Correct.
children are. And over years you accumulate that resistance, those preconceived notions.
Yeah.
So in whatever way you can lower that resistance, I have sort of come to terms that, I don't want to exercise my willpower as much as possible. You
Right.
know, if I can find ways in which learning become feels more natural, then that is the way to go. I want to follow the path of least
Correct.
resistance.
Effortless.
Correct.
Yes.
So to me,
Right.
that is my way of learning. So now I'm not hesitant to make things easy for myself,
Mm.
Mhm.
and and not appear like, oh, I've done the hard yards
Mm.
just for whatever, for a feeling that I've conquered my
Correct.
willpower, which is actually very short-lived, because when you do that, you also get burnt out. Has
Correct.
been my experience.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think both of you have answered it in such a way that, the second part of the question got answered, which is how do you, kill the boredom and discontent in learning? And that's by adding your own originality, your insights, and being more curious, facing the understanding your learning style. I think that is the most important aspect. I think once you understand your learning style, I think the boredom or the discontent, obviously, boredom is also connected to the content that you're trying to consume. But that's a second aspect.
Yeah. I mean, if I have to say, boredom is linked to the ego, and the nature of the ego uh, is always to keep grasping at objects, mental or physical objects, sensations, feelings, thoughts. Uh, it is becoming, right? It wants to become all the time. And when it comes to a point when it is not becoming, or there is no object to grasp,
Correct.
either a physical experience or a psychological thing,
Mm.
then it feels empty.
Yeah.
It feels bored. And boredom is very, very uncomfortable feeling. And
Correct.
out of boredom, and I would say the boredom is one side of the coin, the other
Mm.
side of the coin is loneliness, right? Some may experience it as boredom, a sense of, what do you call it, vegetating, or I mean bored, or meaningless.
Mm.
Second, the other side is loneliness, a desperate feeling or sense of loneliness, of being totally cut off,
Correct.
isolated, alone, right? I mean, it can be either or.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
both are the result of the perpetual activity of the
Correct.
self, which is always trying to grasp a
Mm.
some kind of an objective experience.
Correct.
So, And this is where I think it is related to learning as well as creativity, because most difficult thing for any of us is to be face that emptiness.
Mm.
And why should we always continue? Why should we always keep on active? The brain is always working, always chattering, right? Even when we are sleeping, it is chattering. When we are waking, it is chattering. And so it is important for us to be not always active.
Mm.
And that is why I think boredom must be welcomed, and there's a lot to be learned from boredom when we look at it a little bit more closely. I mean, of course, everything we cannot, by discussing it verbally, we may not able to understand. So there's a lot of experiential factor also involved in this, that we need to understand boredom, and we need to face the feeling of emptiness, face the feeling of loneliness, because and the more we stay with it, the more we face it, uh, the more creative we become. That is the key, because see, a scientist, he's constantly looking at something, right? Acquiring knowledge, then or struggling with a problem. Then at a point, he comes that okay, I will leave it. He leaves it alone, and then the breakthrough happens. When that momentum stops and he's with emptiness or unknown, and
Correct.
and that is when the leap, or that creative door opens. So I think that boredom is the doorway to creativity. If you do not feel, and what we do normally, we do not feel boredom, we resist boredom. 90% or 95% of our activities, conscious or unconscious, are spent in running away from boredom.
Right.
So whether we read a book, whether we watch a TV show, whether we do some socialize, it's all just to avoid this feeling of boredom. But
Correct.
when the activity is over, it comes back again.
Correct.
And it is the ever present factor. And this is something that needs to be faced, because the more we do not face it, the more we escape,
Mm.
or keep ourselves occupied, the more difficult it becomes to face.
Yeah. Absolutely. I like what you said. Boredom is the pathway or the doorway to creativity. I like it. Uh,
This is
so,
also sort
mm,
of what Ashutosh said about boredom.
mm,
I think, and what I've noticed in myself, and I've spoken to friends also, that the biggest obstacle to learning today is basically the super fast context switching because of phones, because of whatever, always being
Yeah.
connected. So you are at very few points in time in a day
mm,
thinking about a problem in an unbroken stretch of time. And
Mm.
and then when you are doing it, it almost feels like you've fallen out of habit.
right.
And it's an unnatural thing.
Correct.
The times for where we could, I don't know, read some story about some theoretical physicist
Mm,
going to bed with a or a mathematician going to bed with a problem and waking up with
yes.
the solution.
Yeah.
That is impossible because now you're going to bed with your phone and you are looking for some dopamine hit at 12 in the
Mm,
night, and when you're waking up, it's your brain is already flush.
correct.
It's not empty for anything new to come
Right.
in.
Right.
And this also, there is something that I learned. It's called feeding your subconscious,
Mm,
which is essentially a technique where you end your workday with a very difficult task, with the most
mm,
difficult task that you're struggling with, that
correct.
you don't have a solution for.
Mm,
But you spend whatever, say the last half an hour of your workday on that,
right.
uh, and then you end
Mm,
without finding the solution,
correct.
and then you switch off from that. Do not
Correct.
think of it.
Mm,
Go around and live your life, but of course, don't go and watch TV for 3 hours straight. But
right.
live a normal life where you can switch off and you not
Mm,
think about this problem.
right.
And then next morning, start your day with that.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So it sort of say that you're feeding your subconscious with a gap that, okay, I do
Mm,
not know the solution to this problem.
mm,
This is sort of a half-written sentence.
right.
And the subconscious tries to write the rest of the sentence without you trying to tell it anything.
Correct.
And then you sort of make this a habit.
Mm,
so that you get into the process of making the most of this I don't know, this empty space.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Well said. I
Yes.
liked that example there.
Yeah. I think the empty space, we should not think of it generally emptiness, nothingness. We
Yeah.
have very negative connotations. We think it is static.
Yeah.
Nothing is happening. It is
Yeah,
blank.
it's yeah.
But emptiness is very dynamic. It is very active. It is
Hmm.
very palpable. And if you see, most of the universe is emptiness.
Right. Absolutely.
Matter, actual physical objects, planets, and whatever, it constitutes a very, very small part.
Hmm.
And so everything is born from emptiness. Everything is come from emptiness. So emptiness is the ground. It's
Correct.
the source of everything.
Yeah.
And that is why it is the source of creativity. And that only emptiness can create something new,
Correct.
or what already exists at knowledge, it cannot create anything new. It can create modifications, it can create incremental changes, it can create permutations, combinations, what AI does, right?
Yeah.
But it cannot create something new.
Hmm.
And so I think emptiness is the guru.
Correct.
Emptiness is what we should learn from.
Yeah, but it's
Hmm.
a very
Right.
difficult thing because it runs counter to all the productivity porn
Hmm.
that you
Yeah,
see shift around because
yeah,
essentially emptiness can't be counted.
Correct.
So
And
it's
that is
almost
what will
like,
make you, again, uncomfortable. And in any case, people probably are
yeah,
hesitant to face uncomfortable situations.
yeah,
not be imagined, right? You cannot, I mean, you cannot formulate it.
Hmm.
That's the whole challenge.
Right. Correct.
You cannot grasp it.
Absolutely. But I think what stayed with me, Satyajit, is that example of the subconscious wherein you work on something that
hmm,
you don't have a solution to.
hmm.
Switch off and then start the next day with that. I'll try doing that.
Yeah, there's uh this person I learned from. His name is Josh Waitzkin.
Mhm.
He was a chess prodigy. He's from the US
Um,
when he was small, and then he switched to Tai Chi, then he switched to Jiu-Jitsu
oh
in
wow.
adulthood. So over and over again, three, four times in his life until he was
Correct.
well in his 40s, he started from scratch a new pursuit that have infinite levels of improvement. Like you
Right.
can get as good at chess as you want it to be. There is no end to it. Similarly
Correct.
with Tai Chi and Jiu-Jitsu.
Correct.
And then
Correct.
he wrote this book called The Art of Learning.
Mm.
And that's one book where he has discussed or shared a lot of the things.
Wow.
This is one of the things. The one other thing that he shares is sort of breaking what he calls breaking down your own game,
Mm.
where you figure out how you learn
Correct.
and you form an approximation, then you break it down that I
Mm.
learned this much by reading, whatever. And
Correct.
then you try to improve at each thing separately. Otherwise, he says that you will only improve by improving your strengths and you will not look at your weaknesses. You will
Correct.
tend to put them in your shadow. But this way, you're being intellectually honest with yourself and saying that, okay, am I.
Absolutely.
And he said that in chess, you have to be because someone spots a weakness
Mm.
and then they will kill you with that.
Correct. Absolutely.
Mm.
And I think that's what matters, right? Because just focusing on your weaknesses or on your strengths, I think doesn't give you the whole picture. It has to be the complete picture,
Yeah.
right?
So,
So,
if you permit me,
go
I
ahead.
will
Go ahead.
ask the last
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yeah, Astush, go ahead.
So, the question I want to ask you guys is, what is the ideal state of mind for learning?
Mm.
And do you think that leisure plays a role? Do you think leisure is important for learning
Mm. Mm. It's an
in the
interesting
sense that
question.
we are talking about?
Right. Right.
So,
Those the state of mind for learning and the part of leisure in the learning, right? So, Tijit,
Yes.
you want to go take it?
yeah, when I heard the word leisure, what came to me is this in video games, you have lean back experience and lean forward experience.
Okay.
So, lean back experiences are very passive games where you can just lean back literally
Mm.
and you
Mm.
don't have to use your head. And then
Right.
there are the lean forward ones where you have to actively think, right? And for me, learning is a lean forward experience.
Yeah.
in the sense that, but that doesn't mean that whatever you are experiencing defines whether or not it's lean
Correct.
forward or lean back. For example, everyone watches movies,
Right.
but
Right.
there are also film critics who get paid to watch
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
They have something called taste, something called judgment that they
Mm.
have developed by leaning forward,
Mm.
by paying attention, by building on those skills of how to judge a work of art. There are book critics, there are food critics, everyone reads, everyone eats. So how come some people are being paid for it? It sounds nonsensical almost.
Yeah.
But to me, that is what defines. And lean forward doesn't mean you have to be aggressive or energetic or anything. I think it means you have to be present.
Mm.
You're not thinking about anything else in the past or in the future. You're just responding to
Correct.
something that's happening and
Right.
paying attention to what's happening inside of you.
Yes.
And I feel almost like uh, you can enjoy anything a lot better by just paying attention
Mm.
to the responses it evokes in you.
Excellent. That's a great way of explaining the concept of leisure in learning. Uh, so I think my thoughts on it would be the state of mind. Well, there's no specific state of mind that a person needs to have for learning, but all that is needed is having the openness to learn and probably staying away from the feeling that I'm know it all. So I think that is where that's what stops us. Again, being curious, as we discussed earlier, is what helps people in learning new concepts. And leisure to me, I think my idea of leisure would be, I think, reading or maybe perhaps learning new concepts at your as per your own pace, being in your own zone, being in your own space,
Yeah.
and uh, again connecting to the concept of gamification, because that's also leisure, where you are kind of leisure and learning, you're probably combining both these two things, where you're explaining concepts in through a game. So I think that is again what I feel does help and takes us away from the rote learning or just mugging up concepts, uh, be it companies, be it organizations, or schools and colleges. So yeah, I think the only state of mind that a person needs is being curious and the openness to learn new things. Yeah. How
Yeah.
about you, Astu?
So, so for me, leisure, what I mean by leisure is, and yes, leisure for me is the ideal state of mind for learning.
Mm.
And what I mean by leisure is that when you have leisure, leisure means the absence of any occupation.
Mm.
Mind is not occupied with anything. No direction, nowhere to go, nowhere to reach, no pressure, no compulsion. Totally comfortable being with yourself.
Right.
No rush, and a very easy state of mind, very easy state of being, where you're not, tethered to anything in particular. And so you're free to look, free to observe, and whatever comes in front of you, you are interested in it. So
Correct.
it's like you're interested in everything and anything that is in front of you, you are totally immersed in it, and you can totally experience it fully and
Correct.
therefore learn about it.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I love your definition of leisure. That's being free
Yeah,
from
that
all thoughts. Right.
yeah, that's
Mm.
I find that when I'm in that state, that's when I learn the most extensively and widely about a subject,
Correct.
and not just learn about it as a concept.
Correct. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, I think with that we've kind of come to an end to this free-flowing conversation on learning. And my takeaway from today's conversation, obviously, it's about the recent one, of course, being free from all thoughts. Then Satyajit, I think your example of working on something that's really tough. That's not on a task or a project that you have no solution to. So feeding your subconscious or seeking help from your subconscious. I think that was my takeaway. Uh, we'll hear it from the two of you and then we'll end the conversation. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Akshay. I think we had a great discussion
Yeah.
and so many things to take away. And what I said last, leisure, I think that's for me, that's the most important thing to have a sense of leisure, to have joy. When we are joyful, we learn much more. In school, also, I always used to learn much more when I was having fun and not when I was kind of, forced to do anything. So I think learning when it is joy, when there is leisure, when we actually enjoy and take a lot of interest in something, that
Mm,
is when the best learning happens.
correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ashutosh. Yes, Satyaji.
Yeah, I think that my thoughts are similar, and if I may, I am also so I like the I'm going to consciously remind myself of the need to stay present and empty
No.
and enjoying leisure. Sometimes
Right,
you don't sort of get into this kind of a frenzy without knowing. And
right.
but the other thing that I was thinking about is that what Ashutosh mentioned then is fun. Like, and when
Mm,
can learning be fun without you uh, trying to spin it off as fun?
correct.
It sort of goes back to agency and the conversation you have that whenever
Mm,
you are uh, setting your own goals,
correct.
then you have the willingness to pursue them. That sort of goes hand in hand. So you have the autonomy to set your own goals and you have the willingness to pursue them, and together you have agency. So then I think learning becomes very natural. Learning becomes fun because you would rather learn this, even if you fail at this because you like it so much,
Correct.
than do something that you might be at a much higher level of competence, but it
Mm,
doesn't really matter to you. It doesn't mean as much to you.
right.
So whatever it is that you find fun is naturally sort of like the soil is prepared
Mm,
for, you know, knowledge to grow, for
correct.
learning to happen. So that's something I'm going to take
Right.
back with me from this conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I think with that, we come to an end uh, of this lovely conversation. Until we meet next with another topic. Astosh, I'm sure you probably thought of a few more topics, right? All right. All the best. Have a
You.
great week
Thank
ahead,
you.
guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you,
Bye.
Akshay. Thank you,
Bye.
Thank you
Ashutosh.
Bye.
Bye
both.
bye.
Bye.